You're live. You might be live. You hope you're live. I always wonder if I'm live. Back in the shack, the surf shack for not the last episode, maybe, but the last like official episode, I guess. Although I did add 2 counties to my overall California count. I think I'm at 43 now. But they were not coastal counties. I don't, or one of them. Yeah, I might have still missed somewhere. Excuse me. So in the last video, I had forgot to do the part 1, part 2 thing. And then of course I didn't do the San Diego area, and I did sort of include lower Central Coast Ventura stuff, which I'm just going to include again here, to be on the safe side, although what I said exactly last time I don't quite remember. But so I guess part 1 will be a recap of some of that. I don't have photos of like every beach I've ever been to, and I'm not uploading tons of photos from the internet or whatever. It's mostly personal photos, and as I said, a lot of spots you just can't pull off and get a picture that you want. So this one, we're still mostly focusing on the day tripping idea as opposed to the full vacation idea, in the sense that, I'm not breaking down B&B rates and finding, the best deals for you and all that kind of like that. That's kind of research you'll have to do yourself if you're not trying to blunder through. Again, in the summer travel, it's going to be a lot harder to find vacancies in some places than others. As I found some places, especially when we get into Northern California, the lodging gets a lot more sparse as the population gets a lot more sparse, and the rates might go up in some places where you thought they would go down. Surprise, surprise, that kind of thing. And a lot of the day tripping thing really for distance becomes, where is your starting point? Because again, going back to Ventura and Santa Barbara, if your starting point is there, you're going to find that Pismo Beach is maybe farther than you thought, or it was definitely a little bit farther than I remembered. And then if you're going anywhere above that, you have to mostly turn inland and go on, Highway 101, and you're in the hot weather again. You're not in the pleasant beach weather, at least for a little while, in some spots, and again, up near below Arcata, Eureka, and Fortuna, it looks like it's another one of those places where Highway 1 and Highway 101 kind of merge. And I did most of that in the very early morning. So I didn't necessarily see a lot of it. But then there's just a junction here. It doesn't really say. I guess I missed it. Riverdale and Leggert area. Well, Riverdale looks like it's in the forest, and I might have stopped there for gas or something. I don't remember. Or Leggert, one of the two. There you can go to the coastal road and go down through some of these little smaller towns if you're starting from, up there, and go. That's still a long way down to Fort Bragg from there. But you can actually take coastal route. There's 2 roads that kind of primarily go to near Fort Bragg that aren't the one that goes to Fort Bragg. That is not the one that I took, which again might have been shorter than the one I took. I don't know. But yeah, so 101 up there, we'll come back to that. I talked about that briefly in my Crater Lake video, which was the first installment of this. So again, another part that might be redundant slightly when I get to it, but I didn't necessarily plan to do a separate beaches video, and then I ended up deciding to do a Southern California beaches video that I just did Saturday. Not that Saturday will matter, if you're watching this in certain, if you're watching this next year in anticipation for the summer or something instead. But then below Big Sur, all the way down to Morro Bay and Monterey. Yeah, Monterey to Morro Bay. You can go along the coast, and then it winds inward and merges with the 101 for a bit through San Luis Obispo. I'm not talking in terms of actual miles. The actual miles don't really matter because the speed limit may not match, your expectations. So I can say, oh yeah, that should only take you 30 minutes. And then you're like, dude, that took an hour and a half. Well, yeah, that's kind of the beach and these coastal roads and that kind of thing. Because in some places you don't expect any traffic because you're in what you thought was the middle of nowhere, and there's still other tourists or whatever. Or there's a rock slide that washed out a bridge because you're literally a cliff and a 2-lane highway and another cliff. A hill and a cliff, however you want to. And then, of course, from Pismo Beach, you turn inward. There's a bit of this 101 that isn't 101 through Santa Maria, but it's not directly on the coast. And that area of 101 might not be as hot of weather as when you get a little bit north of there, although Buellton and all that. But yeah, it's rugged on a lot of spots, and so or whatever, or the one part's an Air Force base or whatever, and so there's a lot of spots where you just don't drive on the coast because of the cliffs or whatever, and you do have to turn in, but you can go Highway 1 through Lompoc instead of Highway 101 there, but I don't know if there's any real advantage to doing that. I know I did it once with a friend. We did the entire, or part of the part of Highway 1 that is the Highway 1. We didn't get off the 101 at Santa Barbara and do the bit of the coast road there just to rejoin or whatever. We weren't like overtly doing the whole thing, but we pretty much did it all the way from Manhattan Beach to Santa Cruz. And it took, like 10 or something hours instead of 8. It was, and we didn't even end up stopping at a bunch of the famous spots like Big Sur. I think, and so again, if you're trying to go to Big Sur, I think most people, like I said in the previous video, would go to Monterey and then go down from there instead of trying to go up from Pismo Beach or Morro Bay or whatever. Technically Morro Bay. San Luis Obispo is where the road forks back again. And so I posted the photos of the missions of Santa Margarita or whatever, and Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz. But I didn't stop at every single pueblo, or like there was one in Paso Robles that was kind of right there that I probably could have gone to from the gas station. But if I had known about it before I saw the sign, then I would have had, time to turn. Oh, San Miguel. Sorry, San Miguel. I'm confusing. Yes, those two names. San Miguel was where I got the photos, not Santa Margarita. Margarita. Enunciate. Okay. So yeah, if you start from Santa Barbara, you could probably make it to San Simeon with the Hearst Castle and all that. Be a long drive though. but that would be mostly along the coast. Or you could do it more closer to the coast again, where the one goes through Lompoc is not at the coast. So I don't know if there's any, like I said, if there's any advantage to doing that instead of going 101 to San Luis Obispo at that point. Like I said, I've done the whole one, but I don't, it's so long of a trip and it was so long ago, I don't remember every little detail. I just remember when we got to, above Cambria, like I said, you're literally, there's no way out. You're on it. You either have to go all the way up or all the way down, and it does go through Big Sur. And when you're at Big Sur, it's not directly at the famous Big Sur thing. So like somehow we drove right past it and didn't see it. Then next, Monterey Peninsula. I have not really. Okay, I'm kind of jumping ahead. I have not really explored Monterey Peninsula itself. That's kind of one of the blind spots in this, which is of course famous. Monterey and Salinas, Steinbeck, and all that, talking about those places a lot and writing about in his books, centering the action in those locations and all that, but the characters and such, being sort of emblematic of those places at that time or whatever, how they've changed and all that, yada yada. And Solvang, I still did not post the Solvang photos, so I guess I'll have to do that sooner than later. I kind of mentioned Solvang in the other video about maybe the Bay Area and the wine country and all that kind of thing. Again, I that was the two counties that I was talking about, were not the Solvang, but the Napa and Solano or whatever. So I don't know if, I guess I have to talk about Solvang a bit again. Just sorry, I know I mentioned it, but Solvang's kind of a bed and breakfast town. And there was a mission there, which I did already post the photos of that mission without posting the photos of the Danish attractions or whatever you want to call it, heritage kind of gimmick or whatever. There's a little museum that I didn't really go in, like Norse history, Viking kind of stuff. The architecture, most of the clever architecture is the bed and breakfast kind of places. So I'm sure I mentioned this. I just posted some new Yosemite photos last night though, and I still haven't done the super bloom and some other thing, but let's see, we're here with Solvang. I took quite a few. What? I don't know why some of these are sideways still in my computer. That's annoying. Oh, I see. That did that. Whatever. 1, 2. Let's can I count some of these, I guess? I don't know. The computer shuts down on its own once in a while, and then when it reboots, everything's kind of screwy. Excuse me. Yeah, I have, I don't know, 30 pictures or something, maybe 10, 15, 20. That's the mission, though. Maybe closer to 20, so a decent amount. There was one windmill, like I said, that I could not get a photo of while I was leaving the area, and there was a windmill kind of right by the freeway entrance, so I didn't really get a proper shot of that. And there was Another one where I was kind of basically standing in the street, trying not to get run over, you know, and people acting like I was blocking so much traffic when there was a line of cars trying to get to Santa Ynez Valley or whatever, and there was road construction, so that was all kind of blocked off for them. So what was so important going in that direction, going left after Solvang, I don't really know. Maybe they all work at the wine place or something, uh, vineyard or whatever, or maybe they were just going wine tasting. I don't know. Um, a lot of the shots, I had more problems in other places trying to get shots with tourists out of the way. I did okay in Solvang because it was kind of a light day. It didn't rain, but the weather was a little bit sort of kind of cloudy and gloomy, and so there was less people. And it was a Thursday, not a weekend, so there was less people milling about everywhere. But you still had a lot of cars, especially this one street where I got this photo of the hills to the south or whatever, and I literally had to stand there forever until all the cars were finally gone. Like that was one of those annoying ones where it was like, really, everybody uses this street right now, this exact second. Why? What is down this street? I don't know. Um. Anyway, but yeah, so Solvang, you know, it's a honeymoon spot or whatever. Um. Down below that, again, some of these two are also famous for the universities. I've never visited University of California in Santa Barbara, but I have been to the one at Santa Cruz, the one at Berkeley, and then of course UCLA and Riverside and Irvine. Like I wasn't going specifically to tour every single college. Usually it was like if I had friends there kind of thing. Um, Again, Ventura, not a town I'm at. So if I start just at the bottom, Ventura is not a town I'm like as familiar with. But I go through there, you know, a couple times a year or whatever. But that's kind of, I guess, where some people would consider the beginning of Central Coast, even though it's still Southern California, or you know, like not. It's maybe more than an hour outside of Los Angeles. I think it's a little bit farther, and depending on traffic, you know, how long it can take on 101 to go through the valley, you know, can vary greatly. You know, anyway, because everything, yeah, east of, I don't know, Thousand Oaks or Calabasas or whatever, you just have commuter traffic on, excuse me, on top of any other kind of traffic. Um, but yeah, there's two ways to get to Ventura from, you know, well, there's more, but I mean, the two main ways to get to Ventura would be 126 or 101. Or, of course, you could go up kind of Highway 1 ish, where it breaks up and all that. But if you started at Santa Monica and went through Malibu and all that, like, again, my buddy and I, we did that after you get through the messy parts by below Venice Beach and Palos Verdes and all that, where we didn't go along the coast at Palos Verdes because that just would have been extra, you know. But you can, but we kind of started above there technically anyway because Manhattan Beach is above Torrance and all that. But I've been on that stretch of beach at Palos Verdes kind of before. So this particular car ride, you know, we didn't like, oh, let's go all the way down to Long Beach and then go, you know, we didn't do that. And my neighbor decided he's going to mow his lawn, so hopefully you're not hearing that too bad right now. In case you're hearing a buzzing noise, that is a lawnmower when I'm trying to do a video. But so then below that, of course, is kind of a suburban area, and then kind of that big open long stretch of Malibu. What's still left there now, I don't know. What needs to be rebuilt and all that. And then, of course, above Ventura, you have a kind of an empty stretch, and then you got Carpinteria and Summerland. So I do have some photos of Carpinteria. I don't have any of Summerland. As I said in the previous video, or one of the previous videos, or two previous videos, maybe, the actual university is in Goleta, not Santa Barbara, but it's to the north. But you actually get a bit more traffic maybe in Goleta, because the Santa Barbara part, like, most people get off here to go to the beach at that Milpitas or whatever, or whatchamacallit. Why can't I think of names right now? State Street. And State Street goes to near the Mission. I have been along State Street and some of those other ones in kind of the artsy district or whatever, the funk zone and all that, but I don't have photos of any of that. Most of it I'd consider a city or a town more than, the beach. I mean, but I've been out on the pier and all that. Or by that area, which is actually really close to the freeway, but kind of good luck finding parking. Like, I don't know if it's easier to find parking more over here by the hills and then walk or not. Which, again, as I said, was kind of more the way I do end up having to do Laguna most of the time, because the town itself is this little tiny wedge, and then you're almost never finding parking there before 6 p.m. To see down below here, it says Wine Canyon Tours, Bird Sanctuary, Orchids, Padaro Beach Grill. This is not meant to be an ad for any of these places. That might be Summerland. I'm not positive. Summerland isn't really on this MapQuest. Carpinteria City Hall is, but then Padaro Beach, I'm not sure if that, but it says Sandyland, not Summerland. I don't think that's the same thing. And then, of course, Montecito is right by there, which is the famous rich area down at the south part of town. And then at the north part of town, again, it's actually Goleta. And like I said, yeah, walking around the little downtown area, it's a lot of, I don't know, gastropubs or microbrews or whatever, that kind of thing. And then pretty expensive houses, a mile north or whatever. I'm not super familiar with Santa Barbara. I haven't really walked around there in several years much, because, again, the parking thing, it was a little more prohibitive than some other places for me to really do that conveniently. Then there's the Ritz-Carlton Santa Barbara, is actually above Goleta right here, where you're kind of on the beach again. UCSB Faculty Club guest rooms. Okay, that's not really going to help us. So anyway, so yes, there is the university there, and that draws a lot of extra traffic and a lot of extra people. And if you go through all that traffic and then keep going, you get to that point where the pier is or whatever from the movie Sideways, which I talked about a bit when I was talking about the solving. And then if you go a bit above that, again, 101 and one fork, and the one way goes to Lompoc and the other one goes to Solvang. And so I don't know that I need to dwell too much on that anymore. Again, if you go all the way up one past Pismo Beach, then you get into, again, no man's land, Los Osos, Morro Bay, blah, blah, blah. Pismo Beach, let me dwell on that for a minute, even though I did mention it in the previous video, at least one of them. Again, farther than I kind of thought. Definitely a doable day trip from Santa Barbara, possibly from LA if you're not planning to stay too long and just have lunch and go back, because it is almost halfway to Monterey and all that. If you go at the right time, you could be in Monterey for, dinner. That would be doable. But again, that might be more realistic on 101 enjoyably for at least, till you get to Salinas. And again, I drove through all these places a long time ago, and I don't remember them. We didn't stop at Hearst Castle. We didn't stop at, Monterey much, except for like gas or something. At Pismo Beach, when I went as a child, and this probably has not changed too much, there was like an off-roading section, like a state beach toward the southern part of the town, and they would drive endlessly in the ATCs, which would now be ATVs and dune buggies and stuff. But it had gotten popular, so everybody was kind of going real slow and just going in a straight line and just going up and down the beach, and trying to get to the actual water was real, treacherous for, I don't know, it was like 7 years old or whatever I was, or 10 maybe. And my mom only recalls that it was gray and misting the whole time, and we were cold and miserable. And I don't remember that as much. I remember it probably burned off like every other beach, and it was probably plenty warm in the afternoon. It probably got sunburned and all that. Am I at part 2 yet? I don't know. We're kind of getting to a specific beach finally, 30 minutes into this. But I kind of feel like, if you want to know, you want to know, right? And the beaches, the town itself is a bit bigger than I remembered when I drove past it this time, but I didn't stop. And there was this like Grover Beach and Oceano. I know I walked on this whole stretch of Highway 1 that one day, or pretty much all of it, and then down along that beach bit back to our trailer, where I was sort of camping. I don't know, probably more than 20 years ago, maybe already, but around 20 years ago. Whereas when I drove past this time, I was like, I don't remember seeing all of this, but I know I walked past it. So, okay. However many hours that took me, 3 or something, I don't know. It's more than 3 miles or whatever part I walked. It seemed like it was pretty far. And it seemed like I did most of it or all of it that was doable on foot. And we definitely, definitely there was still like the dune buggies and the dirt bikes and all that. And I helped 2 guys get a jet ski on a truck on a pit, which that thing was a lot heavier. We should have had more than 3 people for that, and they were acting like I was being a wimp. Okay, you get the hernia. I didn't need this right now. But yeah, the jet skis and all that kind of thing. I don't know how much of it is like a surfer area. I mean, most surfers stick to their local spots, even if it's not the best place, if it's just, sometimes more convenient than other places. Although, again, a lot of this looks just from an overhead map pretty remote, and I don't know how you're surfing. It's probably all rocky cliffs for most of this. So who knows the best surf spots near Pismo Beach is definitely not me. Carpinteria, at least, there's Summerland on the map now. Okay. MapQuest is really, okay, so Bird Sanctuary is Summerland, and below Wine Canyon Tours or at Wine Canyon Tours, somewhere around there. And the Padaro Beach Grill, is south of that and part of Carpinteria, not Summerland. And Sandyland is something completely else. Not the same place as Summerland. Carpinteria, I had been through the tar pits, but I didn't really notice the tar. There's a cliff, and you can look down over the seals. There's like a seal sanctuary at the one spot, and then if you keep going, it's called the Bluffs. And the Bluffs is kind of broken up now because there's like a golf course, a driving range, and some other stuff, and all the locals are mad about it. But if you keep going past that, there's a baseball park, and the town itself is kind of two streets for most tourists. You know, you've got the Carpinteria Avenue, and Linden Street is kind of the main crossroad there. And then Linden Street is where they have like the farmers market on Thursdays, where you have your art gallery, where they have the free music on certain Saturdays. Then right there at the bottom, I believe what they call First Beach, but don't hold me to it, is the state beach where they allow the motorhomes and the camping and all that kind of thing. Below that, there's kind of some, I don't know, industrial park area, but it's not very big. But then from there, you can take the road to Ojai, or, you know, catch the freeway again back down to Ventura. And there's another little hidden spot, La Conchita or Conquita, however you pronounce that. I haven't been in there. I've driven past it, and it looks like a real Popeye kind of town, you know, kind of a historic landmarky kind of looking place. I've never pulled off into there. I suppose I could have tried to get pictures, but of course I've never really stopped and gotten pictures in Santa Paula or Fillmore either, which is of course in the farmland more, but right before you get to Ventura-ish. This is Shoals Restaurant at the Cliff House Inn, so that's another thing that is kind of below there before Ventura proper, kind of hidden in that. But on the one side of the road, you've got like the housing, and on the other side, I guess you have this restaurant. So maybe someday I'll try that one. If I'm going back that way next month or October, maybe I'll check it out. Carpinteria, again, just a small little. I've stopped there for gas and walked around, you know, stretched the legs and all that, because again, a little easier to do it there than Santa Barbara. A lot of the shops are actually closed, so I did do photos of Carpinteria, and like all the kind of historic-y places look like they're getting torn down. So there was the Palms, where I know they used to do line dancing. There's this place that said, oh, everything you need for your day at the beach, but it's closed. So good thing I didn't need anything for my day at the beach. But it was also next door to that was the surf shop, and then there was another thing next door to that. There is some Victorian houses. I posted that one already, of the one that's kind of decorated all goofy with the gargoyles and such. There is near, and I posted already, this kind of one adobe kind of looking funky fun house, I think. Pretty sure, with the cactus garden and all that. There's other quaint little houses. There's this little yellow kind of cottagey one. I think it was yellow. I didn't take a picture of it. You know, kind of smashed. The main theater, the community theater, has all scaffolding up all around it right now, so I didn't bother with photos of that, even though I think that's another old historic building. Here I have one of facing kind of the hills. There's a lot of local uproar about they want to put a hotel there that might obscure part of this first hill, I guess, you know, below the Santa Barbara mountain that's there. But there's already like a bunch of palm trees kind of blocking that part, and some eucalyptus trees, which aren't even native, that totally block. And this was getting to the time of the day when it was already too late, and all the cars and people were starting to get into all my photos, where I've been there earlier in the morning when I would have had less problem. but didn't have a camera that time. So the photos of Carpinteria aren't exactly great. There's some people playing in the volleyball court in this one, and some umbrellas out, which I used for the thumbnail of the last, video, just because, like I said, I didn't really have any good new ones of Southern California beaches. So yeah, I guess for most people, Carpinteria is just kind of a little pit stop. And then, like I said, these other places I can't really go into. Whoops, I'm off the map. What happens here? We get to... Oh, I'm only at Santa Maria. Okay. When we get to Salinas again, one time I took recently the way through Castroville to get back to Salinas, and I think I took the wrong road actually, and somehow ended up on this road instead of that road that went through that main part of Salinas or something. I don't know what I did. I thought I followed the signs, but then I got on the freeway heading back toward the Moss Landing, or this big triangle here. I got on the wrong way doing something, and when I got back off, I don't think I took 156. I think I took something else. And totally went southeast instead of northeast. Not positive. Or maybe it was, no, it couldn't have been that road because I was there. Okay. Yeah, something. I don't know what I did, but I don't think I took the same road as this one with this overpass, but I could be wrong. But above that, of course, Santa Cruz, where I do have photos, and Capitola, so I'll talk about that in a minute. Below that, Monterey proper, like I said, I drove through there once. Where does that highway go to? Carmel by the sea, but we didn't go through Pebble Beach. And Pacific Grove. We would have gone to where it merges here to 68, I'm sure. And we didn't go on, I don't think I've ever been on 68 from Salinas. That was the way I was going to maybe try if I went back, because again, I'm not going to go up all of Highway 1 to get there. If I do a Monterey trip, the one time when I was going down from Santa Cruz, I wanted to do a Monterey trip, but it went to this one lane bottleneck and it got all slow. And I thought for sure that was going to be the whole way. And it turns out that's not necessarily the whole way. That's pretty far though. I didn't get all the way to Castroville because I got frustrated and I turned around Moss Landing or whatever, or closer to Watsonville maybe. When I noticed the county change, I was like, oh, this is not the way I had been before when I had been through Gilroy. For some reason, I had mixed up Gilroy and Castroville in my head. The way to Gilroy, you go through Watsonville. And then below Watsonville, there's kind of a big stretch of nothing, farmland, no real place to turn. You're stuck in one lane of traffic. Everybody was on your butt doing 80 miles an hour a minute ago. And then the next second they're parked right in front of you. And you're like, yeah, where did you think you were going, dummy? So the second time I powered through and I made it to Castroville, but I did not go again to Monterey on one below that through Marina. So I know I've been through it again, but I don't remember it at all in Seaside and Monterey. And of course, Carmel was famous in the Parent Trap back in 1965 or 7 or whatever. But I couldn't tell you anything about it, except obviously it's next to Pebble Beach. So I probably couldn't afford a stake there anyway. Whereas Salinas is more of it's a pretty big city now. You know, it's not just a farm town, kind of what I was saying about Modesto and Merced and Stockton and some of those other places that have definitely expanded since I was young and used to go through them pretty often. Gilroy, of course, and San Jose being not the beach. And once you get inland there, you've lost those beach temperatures. yeah, you go from nice and pleasant in Castroville to 100, 105 below Salinas or whatever. In a lot of parts of the summer. I know it's kind of back to school now already, but so then, yeah, Watsonville's not technically a beach town, although there might be some parts that are kind of ocean adjacent. Aptos, I think, is where that pier was with the broken boat, but they demolished that now. And I had some old pictures from way back when, but I have no way to really scan them, and I didn't go down there this time. But there was that cliff that I used to walk, and there was a place where you could pick blackberries kind of along the side of the hill. In Santa Cruz, there was a place where you could pick the blackberries near the butterfly preserve, but of course I was there too early this year to really look into that. It was more of kind of a autumn thing. So I did take a bunch of photos of Capitola, but it was, I guess I'm just kind of going south to north, doing them a little bit out of order. By the time I got to Capitola, Santa Cruz was already waking up, and Capitola was already, all the parking had already been taken. All the surfers get there at 6 in the morning or whatever, and whoever else can, there's a part where you can park for 8 or 12 hours or something, but it's pay parking, and it looks like they just get there at 8 a.m. and leave their car there all day. So good luck with that. The actual little ring of the town, everybody was just sitting in traffic, stuck in traffic, believing. Did I do part 2 already? Should this be part 3? I guess this should be part 3, because we've officially reached actual Central Coast, but also what is considered Northern California, right? Above, I mean, there's that big empty stretch. I'd say above Santa Cruz and San Francisco, people from Northern California will still consider Central California. They won't consider that Northern California at all. Whereas, again, people from LA might consider anything above Santa Barbara Northern California. So the terminology is not perfect. And the state is huge. And the roads in Capitola are narrow, little winding things. It's kind of worse than Santa Cruz. This was the first time I tried driving it by myself. My sister and I drove there one time, and she parked kind of probably illegally while I ran out onto the bridge and got photos. So I got new versions of some of those same photos that I, again, I can't really scan them very easily. With this box of electronics, but Capitola is actually an older settlement than Santa Cruz technically, but the buildings there are kind of not all newfangled. There's some old houses. I took pictures of some of it, but I didn't go as shutterbug as I could, because again, that time of day there was too many people walking around. There was joggers running through my shot. They could see I was taking a shot, and they didn't care. They went right through it anyway, so I'd have to stand there and wait for him to pass and then take it again. And people were kind of more rude and, they weren't all yuppies necessarily. There was plenty of tourists or people that didn't live in the immediate area that were parking, in all the places where I was trying to park. I was lucky to get a spot up off the beaten path, and then I had to walk down the whole hill and back up the whole hill. Again, not too treacherous, but what I was going to talk about, when I had gone to Northern California, I had taken, and this is a men's style fashion video channel, so don't be too surprised that I talk about things other than just the beach, but I had worn these, no cushiony, kind of just regular, they do have a bit of arch support, boat shoes when I had gone farther north in Mendocino, which I'll be talking about, I don't know, 20 minutes from now, sometime soon, which I have also photos. And they were the exact wrong shoes for that town. These are like Newport Beach shoes, or whatever, not Mendocino shoes. I didn't expect it to be also kind of foresty. We'll get to that. So when I got to Santa Cruz, I switched to these, which are the Dr. Scholl's ones, and these were brand new, straight out of the bag, or maybe I'd worn them once. I don't know, but these that have more of a walking sole and definitely a more cushiony insole, but what you can't see is that and I have other pairs of these with the leather tops, and I've worn them a lot, and I never had an issue. But in the, man, I don't think you'll be able to see it. In the front, though, there's kind of this perforated, breathable zone in the insole where it's kind of like walking on a grid or a waffle iron or a manhole cover. And it created nothing but hot spots on my feet. As soon as I walked around Santa Cruz for like an hour on a Friday night, I already hated them. And then after I walked around for another 2 or 3 hours, I had just massive blisters on the soles of my feet in the soft part. And so that made everything unbearable. And I ended up wearing the other ones the next day to run around and take my photos. I threw these back in the car. So that kind of ruined my trip for doing the idea of doing a third day and getting more photos and going to Monterey. It was just like, no, forget it. I can't even hardly walk, but I did walk up and down Capitola to get these little bits of shots. So 41st Street, there's a kind of a stretch. I had always thought the pier was there, but it's not, or it was demolished and they rebuilt it or whatever. My memory was kind of, I know I had dinner there one time with this gal, and that restaurant has not been restored. The stuff on Santa Cruz Pier, as far as I know, is all still there, but I didn't go out on that pier very far either because it was already nighttime and the boardwalk was getting ready to close pretty soon. But so yeah, there's still surf shops and bike shops and all that kind of thing on 41st Street. And then you go a little bit farther from there, and you got the mall, the Fashion Plaza, whatever they call it up there, Capitola Mall, and then a little above that northeast of there is Soquel Village, which I used to be familiar with, but I did not go through this time. Keep going from there. You got Santa Cruz Harbor. So of course I got some pictures of Santa Cruz Harbor, but the bridge was closed, so I couldn't conveniently drive just in one thing or walk across that bridge. Or maybe you could walk across the one part. I'm not sure. I didn't try because again, my feet were killing me. Thanks to Dr. Scholl's miracle nightmare torture shoes. So some of the walking that I used to do, just not even thinking about it, was extra torture now, but everything seemed farther than I remember. And of course, in those days, like I said, I would take a bus for part of it sometimes, or I had a friend who lived in Soquel Village, so that was my starting point a lot of the time. So I would go from there toward Santa Cruz or down to the Capitola area, maybe. And I had another, like I said, I used to walk all the way to that Aptos Pier, which is, I couldn't have imagined trying to do that this time. And I didn't even try to drive to it because, like I said, the Saturday morning traffic had already started. They had activated. They were everywhere. And so there was a big surfer thing. So I got a photo of that at this one park, overlook kind of place, but that's not directly in the village. It was a little housing area where I was lucky to find a spot. Some people were kind of parking in the red curb to load and unload and then, driving away. And where they ended up parking, I have no idea. Because, yeah, there was already a billion of them there. Whereas it was pretty easy to find parking at 41st Street at that hour. Although I'm sure it gets worse most of the time. And then the tracks, of course, the famous train tracks. Well, in the movie, okay, so if you're a movie buff, it was the Lost Boys. Although at the time in Santa Cruz, the popular movie was near dark. They thought Lost Boys was cheesy or whatever, and so all the wannabe vampires were watching Near Dark. But I was a Southern California guy, so I was all into Lost Boys. So for me, it was, is that the bridge from the thing? It's like, well, yes and no. When you get there and you see the layout and you realize, okay, they're not riding their motorcycles 30 miles. The beach ends there. It shows them kind of chasing back and forth and chasing back and forth, and looks like they're going really far. But so I did get some photos of the railroad bridge and the now 101-year-old roller coaster. This was the same morning before I went to Capitola, so like I said, I'm kind of going in reverse. The night before, they had been showing Goonies on the sand at that same beach, so I felt gypped that it wasn't the Lost Boys. Capitola, yeah, getting in and out. I don't know. The girl that I asked directions, because again, the bridge was closed, so I couldn't go my usual way. So I had to wind my way through Seabright or whatever. She was trying to convince me just to get back on the freeway and go back down. But she didn't really tell me street names, so I don't know. For some reason, I had 17th Avenue stuck in my head, but I don't think I ever actually ended up on 17th at all. So what's still there, I don't remember. Because of course I ended up way over here at the little downtown I went Cliff Drive for part of it, but the East Cliff Drive is not really that long. And then Opal Cliffs, yes, I went on that. Pleasure Point Beach, that might be where I got these photos. That sounds correct. I might, so hopefully I'm not giving away a local spot, but whatever. There was tons of them out there, so they already all found it. And then, of course, Steamer's Lane being the one by Santa Cruz that's probably the most famous, by the Surf Museum. I did take a couple photos of Santa Cruz Pier from that that spot, but I didn't really try to take any pictures of surfers, and I didn't really see any out there. It was still kind of cold and foggy when I was there. As I had talked about in the previous video, when I drove down through San Francisco, it was already getting kind of foggy going that way, but I was lucky that I didn't have to deal with any fog going down 101 this time, or one, I should say. But I have had fog on 101 and I-5 before, different trips, different times of the year. I think it's usually worse on Highway 101 than on Highway 5. But your results may vary, because we jumped over to 101 from Highway 5, and I was positive it was going to be worse, and it was clear heading north that one time. So, yeah. So, like I said, lucky I was early enough that I didn't get the fog too bad, but then the fog came in and covered over the full moon when there was guys trying to take pictures of themselves by the boardwalk clowning with the moon and stuff, and I was like, you already missed it. The moon's already hidden, and they didn't even notice. They weren't even listening to me. I was like, you're too late, dude. The moon went behind the cloud. So yeah, so then, like I said, you have the harbor there, the wharf, whatever. The college. Like I said, I didn't go out on the pier this time. I had seen a dead seal rolling around one time in the kind of donut thing at the end there. And dead pelicans before. A lot of, like I said, kind of a lot of jogger types and people who are showing up at Capitola, and they park in front of you to unload their car. So every minute that they waste in front of you doing their thing is another minute you lose that parking spot that you can't get back to because you're stuck in that traffic. Santa Cruz, not that much better, but a much bigger town and a lot more areas where you can kind of pull off and look for parking. A lot of big hotels and places on Ocean Street and all that when you're getting near the boardwalk. The the Sea Bright and the Live Oak and all. I forget where Live Oak is exactly. It's not really showing on here, but like I said, I kind of had to wind my way through all that and kind of figure it out. I didn't go back down Highway 1 for the whopping 2 blocks or whatever. I was like, no, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. So anyway, the river, I'm not sure which river that is. The San Lorenzo River is well, that's the harbor. Sorry, I'm doing the map instead of the photos. So, of course, there's nothing labeled. Soquel Creek. Okay. So that's Soquel Creek there that goes through by Capitola, not the bigger San Lorenzo River, which goes down past Bay Street or whatever. San Lorenzo River, yeah, everything got screwy there. I ended up walking an extra hour or something going the wrong way because everything I thought went north does for a bit and then goes east. So I took the wrong and I missed the bridge, and I could have gone up the Riverwalk, which would have been faster and would have taken me straight to Soquel, but I thought, oh, there might be homeless people or something along there. Turns out there's plenty of homeless people up in other spots. Probably would have been nobody there. Probably would have been way faster. I ended up on Laurel Street, which I always remembered running more north, but actually runs more west. So that really messed me up. And then finally found my way to Front Street or First Street, either or. They come together here at this place, and then there's kind of a no man's land, like half a block or whatever before you get to like the like beach stuff. And then I didn't take photos of the roa shops along that strand, all the touristy kind of stuff. I guess technically it's north of the boardwalk, but it's more west of the boardwalk because it actually dips and goes a little bit more southwest of the boardwalk, but in a direction that is technically going to be heading toward, again, if you go Bay Street, you end up going north toward Highway 1, which is north, but it's still west at this point. So I did drive along West Cliff just for Lost Boys nostalgia, but I didn't take any real photos of the whole thing. I just took the photos of, like I said, this kind of overlook and looking back toward the pier. Whereas if you go out a little farther, it's just empty ocean. So that, and then of course the west or north part of town, the streets kind of do this funky thing where Mission is the main street, and then that dead ends at Water, and then Water's kind of the main-ish street, because if you go the other one, you're on the freeway, and that dead ends at Soquel. And so all the college kids or whatever hanging out in the downtown area, I'm asking them, how do I get to Soquel? Because I knew it was right by there, but I couldn't remember which street would be the best one to connect. And none of them knew what Soquel meant. It's like, okay, you're a newbie, never mind. Whereas when I first got to Santa Cruz, again, my friend lived in Soquel Village. So the first thing I did was go up Front Street to Soquel Street with my bag in hand, and I did not take the bus. I walked the whole hour all the way out to the Dominican Hospital area. There's a whole lot of stuff right where if you go Chestnut Street to Cabrillo Highway on here before it becomes the official freeway, like that whole neighborhood, I know that neighborhood above there, and there was like a grungy thrift store and a baseball park and some other stuff, and then the railroad bridge that goes through there. I walked through that whole thing one time and it was all mucky sludge and went up all up the back of my legs. Don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. Anyway, but I did it anyway, just, I don't know, to be crazy. I walked through that whole stupid thing. And it's way longer than you think it is. And if a train comes, you have nowhere to go. Okay. So yeah, Water Street and Soquel Street are part of it's kind of no man landy, and then part of it was kind of hip spots. So there were some people listening to music in this parking lot next to a Mexican, not a Taco Bell, but not a restaurant. Maybe it was kind of a sit down restaurant, but most of the people seemed to be going to a takeout window. I should have just eaten there. It would have saved me a lot of trouble. But if you go up Ocean Street, there's a Denny's and a McDonald's and a Habit or something. I almost went to the Habit, and a whole bunch of motels and stuff there. I don't know if there's cheaper ones out in Soquel Village, because the first one I stopped at, the rate seemed to be reasonable enough compared to what the guy had told me in Santa Rosa the night before, where I talked about that in the Napa video a bit, but we'll be talking about it again in a minute because it relates more to this video, which is definitely going to be just a long video. No apologies. We're already at 1 hour, but that's okay. Because, I only plan to do this once unless I forget something. But so there were some places, but then the one that said they had the cheapest rates was actually the most expensive one. The part that really got me was I had to put a second security deposit on the credit card, but then they refund that like when you check out if you have no issue. So when I got my bill, that was not on there, but there was a $30 tax charge. So to sleep for 6 hours ended up costing me closer to $200. Thanks, California. Don't know where that $30 goes, but there you go. Why they charge me tax on top of that when they're already charging the hotel tax, I'm sure. I don't know, but I definitely had to pay that. But again, if you can afford it, you don't have to ask. And if you have to ask, you can't afford it or whatever. So the places near Capitola and the places near the boardwalk, I'm sure, even more pricey. But if you want to be right by the boardwalk, then that's your priority. Like I said, those people are already kind of getting out there at 9 in the morning to get their spot at the beach or go have their fun in the joy rides and the games or whatever, the arcade and all that. The boardwalk, yeah, it's still a boardwalk. I don't know how much they've changed the rides. It seemed like it was all the same rides from 25 years ago or whatever. I didn't go across the Lorenzo River on the footpath just because my feet were killing me, but I took a couple pictures, and I don't know if I could have gone the whole thing across to the harbor or not, but of course that's the back side of the harbor. The front side of the harbor, I didn't even really get there this time because that Murray Street was closed, or part of it somewhere. I don't know. I got kind of frustrated and gave up, but I know I had walked that entire thing before a long time ago. And this area here, this no-name kind of area, I did walk through the beach flats a little bit, which is only interested to old timers or whatever. Yeah, East Cliff. I only went out on the part by East Cliff really briefly. Everything was tore up. I got one picture just kind of parking in the street more or less for a minute, and I only kind of blocked one car, so it wasn't too bad. But all the parking around there is all zoned for boat trailers and stuff, so these people are taking up 3 spots instead of 1 because they have a permit, yada yada yada. So any place where you wanted to put your car to get a better picture, you couldn't. But I got that one picture without having to break the law too bad, because I was kind of just at this guy's driveway or whatever, and I was only there for like 30 seconds. But yeah, it was all road construction or something around that corner, so it's kind of a nuisance. So anyway, so going above so obviously Santa Cruz, above that you have the university. I didn't get any new photos of the university. You got the redwood forest and you got the meadows and all that. They're paving so much of it. They're adding all these new buildings down here. What used to be the lower meadow will no longer be a meadow by next spring, it looks like. So that is just, if you're a new student there, you missed it. You totally missed it. I don't know what's still left that's even worth discussing about the university. I was able to find one lucky parking spot in one area and took a couple of photos. I don't know if I'll bother to post those or not, because this isn't really a college video, it's a beach video. But again, the university is like a third of the population of the town for most of the year or whatever, and most of the locals can't stand most of the students, although I never really saw a lot of students in a lot of the areas where I would go. Like I went to the McDonald's there and it was still mostly Hispanic. When I used to go to the Burger King there, it was mostly Hispanic. When I used to go to I had some friends who lived in this little circle area. Wilkes, yeah. They would have some parties there in the big houses that have been all partitioned off into littler rentals. And you pay a gazillion dollars for a tiny little room, but they could all afford it, and yada, yada, yada. And you're close to the beach, but it doesn't matter because you're there in the winter, so you're not using the beach hardly as much as you'd like, unless you're just like walking along West Cliff or rollerblading or something. That's kind of the thing I was discussing with a guy on Sunday. When you get above, I don't know, maybe just even above Pismo Beach, the water's already so cold that even in summer it can be an issue. I went to the beach in Santa Cruz in June one time near the pier, and after about 20 minutes, I had already turned purple and couldn't stand it anymore. And I had a skim board that I had gotten from the rental place. I was able to use that a little bit without, being in the water. A lot easier than trying to body surf. Body surfing was like, okay, there's your one wave, one or two, and then I was done, and then you warm up again before trying to do the skim board. But I never surfed that area, the West Cliff or anything. I knew some guys who would, and they were students, so I don't know what kind of reception they had, but they used to warn you on campus, don't have any UCSC stickers on your car, don't have any banana slugs sweatshirts in your back, out in plain view or that kind of thing. I don't know if that's changed or if that was ever really that much of an issue. There were quite a lot of people, even right by the mission, where, yeah, they were definitely setting up camp for the night or whatever. They were giving out the free food first thing in the morning, although I didn't see a big long line yet, so I don't know when that officially started. Logos, which used to be a pretty popular book, CD, music store kind of place, that closed now, but Streetlight was still there. Streetlight Records, kind of more your punky, hip, I don't know, version of less of the erudite scholarly one. It was kind of a big deal when Logos first moved into downtown, because Logos had been around the corner, not SoCal, I forget what street, Walnut maybe, or near Laurel. There's Laurel Street exit. I'm not sure what that is. That seems like it's a little too far south. Elm Street. Oh no, Maple Street. That might have been it. Maple Street. Anyway, I remember when I first went there, way back when. The first place my friend had taken me was Logos, but then later, when I went, he was still in town, but he wasn't at the college anymore or out in SoCal anymore. And it had already moved into the main downtown area. Most of the shops there, when I was there later in the night or earlier in the morning, they were all closed. So I didn't see most of the shops this time. I got there last trip. I got there more close to 2 in the afternoon and stuff was open and I still didn't really go in it. Trader Joe's is still there. I don't know if Zanotto's was still there, probably. So yeah, Water Street. Part of it was a one way. I don't remember that being the case for driving. So it was kind of, I ended up having to do kind of donuts around this wedge to just see it from the car again. Because like I said, when I walked through the night before, I wasn't really seeing everything because I had turned at SoCal to go out to the motel because it was already late and my feet were absolutely destroyed. And it still took me another half an hour or whatever to get all the way out there. Branciforte, that comes through at an angle and takes you the wrong way, but that's by the Whole Foods. And like I said, in that stretch, there was a bit more nightlife and things. And then if you went up, well, the downtown, there was still a couple spots. The Catalyst is still there where they have actual concerts. I don't know who was performing. I got there too late for it to matter and all that. So yeah, but like I said, in here you're doing actual city stuff most of the time. If you're there, there's surfboard shops and restaurants. And the one I forgot was the Crate place. I walked right by it or near it, and when I went out of my way that way, I remembered enjoying that place, but also thinking it was really expensive. So I don't know if I would have wanted to eat there this time or not. But afterward, I was looking at the map and going, "Oh yeah, I was right by there. I remember that place from that time I went with those girls." Yada yada yada. Because they dragged me to the place saying, "You'll like it. Trust us. You'll like it." You know, that kind of thing. So maybe you'll like it if you're into that sort of food. Then the other end of town, you still have the Safeway, although they remodeled the parking lot or the front of the building or something and added a Starbucks or whatever it is. Down here, yeah, Bay Street. I had always thought Bay Street was a little bit more convenient, but it dumps you out above and below the pier at the same time. So that, but you have to go all the way around this whole big empty wetlands marsh area or whatever this is. Neigh Lagoon. Yes, I had forgotten all about Neigh Lagoon. So when I was trying to walk the first time, when I didn't have a camera, well, I did have a camera, but I wasn't carrying it because when I got out of the car. So I would have had a better photo of the pier if I had kept going down Bay Street and maybe taken a photo from there that day. But I didn't have the camera with me, and it was farther to go back this way. So I went back to my car and I drove over, yeah, probably California to Laurel Street. I don't remember. Or I parked on Walnut at one point after I had parked on maybe Laurel or Chestnut area. But yeah, the one area, like it was still too far from what I wanted or something. I don't remember. Anyway, so I didn't end up taking my camera and I didn't end up getting that photo. So when I did get the photo the next time, it's all gray and it doesn't look as nice as what I wanted when it was all blue and surfy and happy looking. It was the next day and it was all burning off, but still kind of overcast and all that kind of thing and cold. And I didn't have a sweatshirt, but I had a little light jacket that was more of a safari sport coat thing, and it was fine. King Street, they put in a roundabout at King Street that is for golf carts. That's not for cars. I had to make a 3-point turn to use the roundabout there. Some of these other streets I used to know, I didn't really go up on all of them. Laurent and Hubbard, and yeah, some of these other ones. I didn't go all the whole way down High Street. I didn't go. I did go up Western and down Bay. And like I said, I just kept going down Bay. And then, like I said, feeling kind of dumb because I should have cut over on Laurel and gone that way to the pier from, well, it's technically West Cliff, but I would have had to park somewhere around Chestnut or whatever anyway. And just walked the rest because finding parking in the downtown and with it being a one-way and all that, like, forget it. Like, I just gave up. I was just paranoid about leaving all my stuff in the car, but I was far enough out of the downtown area that I didn't really need to worry. Nobody was anywhere near my car. But the first place I parked, it was even farther to walk because, like I said, I was on the wrong side of that lagoon, and I really wanted to go to not the boardwalk, but nearer the pier and all that kind of thing. So walking around that whole big long thing, it's either or. I guess if it just seems longer. If you're going on the way out from there, then from there, blah blah blah. Okay, so that's Santa Cruz in a nutshell. Like I said, okay, so above Santa Cruz, basically Davenport. I've stopped there before, but not this time. I didn't get any photos. Then you have a huge, long, empty stretch. Most of it did take that one picture of the lighthouse from the wrong angle. I could have got a second picture, but again, the fog was coming in, so it wouldn't have been a great picture. But it would have been a slightly better picture, maybe. Half Moon Bay is about the same amount north as Palo Alto. And as I talked about in the previous video, I drove all around San Jose and Santa Clarita and Mountain View and all that, and got mixed around. I've been on 101 to San Francisco at least once, but I don't remember that area at all. But you're not really at the beach there, but there is the water that comes down from San Francisco Bay or whatever, and I don't know when or if any of this is fresh water. Pretty sure that's all salt water. And I don't know if this part has a different name or if it's still just called San Francisco Bay. There's not showing me any words here, so I guess that's all still technically San Francisco Bay. What part is called East Bay? I always thought was the other side, the Fremont, Hayward, San Leandro, Alameda. I think that's East Bay. So what this area on the peninsula is called, I don't know, but Redwood City, San Mateo, San Bruno. Again, I didn't go through any of that this time, or tried not to go through most of it, and ended up in part of it. And then there's a bridge there that I could have taken, I guess, but I went back through Milpitas, whatever, and went up through Concord instead of going the Livermore and Dublin and all that. Okay. Half Moon Bay is it's another one that's a lot bigger than I remember. I don't know if it was always that big, but I think you still get a lot of commuter traffic from San Francisco, so it can get pretty slow going in either direction that way. I had it more slow the one day than the other day, I think, which kind of earlier in the day it was worse, oddly enough. For some reason, I don't quote me on that, but I didn't stop there this time, but I have stopped there before. So I did not get any photos between Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay. Above Half Moon Bay, it's actually a lot closer to San Francisco than I remembered. I always remembered it as being Half Moon Bay when I was younger, but it's not. Is that area called Rockaway Beach where the Taco Bell is? The Taco Bell has been there forever. That's where we used to always stop. And now it looks like they've kind of built up around it. And then Pacifica. I used to always call that Pacifica, but it's technically not actually Pacifica. And there's a bit where you kind of go inland before you're back on the coast again. But again, this whole area, you're driving mostly along the coast, not directly on the cliff the whole time. But it's a pretty straight shot as far as coastal drives go. But the speed limit, again, is not, 80. For most of it, it's like 30 or 40 or something for big parts of it, or there's so much traffic that it doesn't matter if it's 50 because you're just sitting there, not parked, but doing 25 or whatever. So yeah, because San Francisco not really known as a surf town or a beach town, but there is still, surfing and all that kind of done. It's wetsuits year round, I'm sure. How much of that is half suits? Probably none. Then, of course, Golden Gate Park. I'm not going to dwell on San Francisco. Again, if you're going there, you're going there. But again, as a starting point, if you're starting from San Francisco, then driving down to Santa Cruz and back is not really that big of a deal. Totally doable in a day. Monterey might be where you'd want to stay a night. It's not that much farther than Santa Cruz. But to especially if you're going to try and do both of them in one day and really enjoy it, you might want to have breakfast in Monterey and then drive back, that kind of thing. Again, Big Sur, you could make that pretty easily, but that would definitely be, again, a thing where I think you would want to stay either there or Monterey. You could maybe stay in Santa Cruz, depending on how late you got there, how long you stayed there, and all that kind of thing. I don't know what kind of hotels and motels there are in Castroville, or if there's a better rate there. Like I said, it was kind of a farmland area. And there was a couple photos I would have liked to have gotten in Moss Landing and didn't. So the area above San Francisco, the whole Mill Valley, Sausalito, there's the road kind of snakes through what looks like a forested area on the map. What that actually looks like, I don't know. I didn't go that way. I ended up taking the cutoff to Petaluma. So again, I'm talking in reverse now. I'm gonna stop doing that in a minute. Petaluma I had already been through, and Roanoke Park all below Santa Rosa, where again I had stayed the night before. But so I cut off a chunk of the road going that way, but I did not do any of this stuff that might be similar to Morro Bay or whatever, or Monterey area or something. I don't know. Point Reyes, I know that name, but I didn't go through there. Ballina Stinson Beach, I know that name, but I've never been there. Then there's this kind of inlet jetty thing going on here, and I don't know if this is all a national forest or what. There's nothing showing up here on this. There, Schooner Bay, Home Bay, Drake's Estero. I don't know if these are accessible by road much. There's a couple roads that go near there, and this is not technically Highway 1, so I don't even know what to call these roads. Obviously, I wasn't that brave. I didn't have all day to explore that kind of thing. And I was pretty burned out after going south on Highway 1 all the way from Bodega Bay to Mendocino. So when I had done my previous trip, now we're going to talk about Northern California, actual Northern California, not Central Coast, because again, all this part of Central Coast, I never been to any of it. Once when I was young, we had gone as far as Windsor and Healdsburg, which is a little bit above Santa Rosa, to a campsite, but we only stayed there at night, and we went to San Francisco and Oakland during the day, and it was a longer drive than we thought it was going to be, but doable. We left San Francisco at sunset the one night and got back when it was already dark. The other time we went through San Francisco and went straight to the campground, and it was like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there? So yeah, so when I saw that cutoff to Petaluma, everybody told me, take that, don't keep going the rest of this. So I didn't, and that was probably a fine decision overall. And the Golden Gate Bridge, there's a toll going south, but not north, I guess. And it's like $10 or something. Or you can get the Bay Area Pass if you're there pretty often and do the fast track and all that kind of thing. So I had planned to go to, I kind of wanted to go back to Eureka and redo the redwoods there, and then maybe go up the Oregon coast. But I also wanted to go to Napa, which I explained. I got there at night and didn't really get to enjoy the place, and I walked around Calistoga for like an hour or whatever. Because on the previous trip, I had left Eugene, and it was still day, but it was already going to be nighttime by the time I got to Grants Pass. So instead of staying at Grants Pass like a sane, normal person or whatever, or even trying to get to, well, they had named a town Brookings, and I didn't realize that Brookings was not going to be on this road that goes through Cave Junction. So I got to Cave Junction around 9:30, and I don't know if there was any place to really stay there, but that should have been where I should have stayed, I guess, if I didn't. So I kept going, and I think I got to Crescent City at 11:30 or midnight, somewhere around there, and didn't realize I was at the beach because I kept looking for this Brookings. Well, Brookings is a different way up the one, not, or is that 101? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, 101. Although I think it's called Oregon Highway 1 there. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. But 101. And so, yeah, I really messed myself up because there's practically nothing between Crescent City and Eureka. There's three little towns or whatever, or four, and then Arcata. And then I really probably should have stayed at Arcata. I stayed near Arcata, though. I think McKinleyville, was that it? I think there was a rest area there that I ended up sleeping for 3 hours, or trying to sleep, and then drove through Eureka. But all this was basically forested and huge redwoods, and so I don't know that you'd be able to see that much more in the daytime, honestly. I'll get into that in a minute. But I was only seeing it with high beams and trying to dodge a couple deer and all the crazy drivers coming the other way in the middle of the night that you didn't think were going to be there. Like, okay, where are you going? Cave Junction? I have no idea. So Brookings, I never actually went to Brookings. I kept looking for it on the signs and it never showed up. Just all of a sudden it says you're in California, and I'm like, how am I in California? I thought I was going to the beach. You aren't going to the beach. You're just going to a totally different beach, 100 miles away. Okay. So I was disappointed that I didn't get to see any of that, and I debated going back. But the first night, I detoured to go to Napa Valley, which doesn't take you that far out of the way, really, of Highway 101 compared to if I had gone up I-5 again. Well, I didn't technically go up I-5. I went up 99, which even goes even farther out of the way till it merges with I-5 way up at almost Redding. But from Napa, yeah, I would have had to backtrack to get back to a more logical way to go to I-5 than whatever this little road is from Ukiah. I say little road, but it's a highway. I'm just not seeing the number yet. 30 or 20. Okay. So my plan was to enjoy Napa and then go through, like I said, Calistoga, and take this road 128 from 29 or whatever to Geyserville. But then when I stopped in Calistoga, everybody was acting like Geyserville was the middle of nowhere, and why would anybody ever go there? And they never heard of Healdsburg or Cloverdale or Hopland, which Hopland is not even actually the cutoff that I took this time. So I ended up getting directions from them and maybe taking the wrong road. I probably should have taken the road to Fulton instead of the one to Santa Rosa. It probably would have been slightly less mountains or something. I don't know, or less confusing to find the freeway. Anyway, somehow I found a motel and stayed there. Because the guy said, take the one to Sebastopol and that'll take you to 101. Okay, fine. And then I went all the way to Windsor where it was even more expensive and turned around and went all the way back. So that was an extra 14 miles after driving through winding mountain roads in the middle of the night again. Because there was nothing in Napa that was affordable in that whole valley that I know of. They all said you have to go back to Fairfield. And I didn't want to go all the way back to Fairfield and start farther away from Eureka and all that the next morning. So I didn't. I stayed in Santa Rosa and it was fine. And it was decent, a fair amount of drive. But this time I went straight to Mendocino instead of Eureka and all that. Now, like I said, there's a way that you could go to Fort Bragg that might be a faster way. It's a more direct route this way and then down to Mendocino, but I would have had to go all the way up to Willits. So that seemed like it was extra, maybe only slightly, as opposed to going through Yorkville, Boonville, and Philo, where I should have stopped at least one of those to use the bathroom, because then after that, it's a really, really long drive with nowhere to really stop through a lot of dense redwood forest where you can barely even see the sun. Didn't expect that. So again, above there, how dense it is. Would I have gotten any photos near Eureka or above Arcata and McKinleyville and all that? I don't know. Oric. The part of Oric that goes through the forest. Again, I did this at night, so my memory is not great. But yeah, this part of Oric where you go through the forest is probably where you want to get some photos if you could, but I don't know if you can. And then some of this other part is right on the coast, but I didn't know I was at the ocean below Crescent City. Here's another forested area, and then you're on a cliff, it looks like. And maybe I saw the ocean there, and I don't remember because it was after midnight. And it was 2 weeks ago or something already, so my memory not exactly remembering. So anyway, the stuff that I didn't show before, I think I will likely do a video where I just talk about these kind of things, and I wish I had gotten more. I meant to grab some when I was in Santa Cruz and completely forgot, but I might still have some old ones lying around. But anyway, this was the ones that I showed before in the Crater Lake video. So this stuff, I already showed the covers of them. The Dragons Wild, Rivers Coast, and Redding. Redding, of course, being not near the coast at all. It's I-5, but could be a still logical way to go if you were going to go to Redding and then turn left instead of doing this long, I don't know that the 101 is that much slower when you're getting above wherever, Sacramento and everything else, because you're not having a lot of civil. Once you're above Santa Rosa, you run out of like big towns immediately. So yeah, it's more winding and it takes you all the way to Fortuna, but I don't know that this mountain road from Redding to, let me get the number here, 299. I don't know if that looks like it would be endless, even more than 101, but it's a way you could go if you want to get to Arcata and Eureka that way. So maybe I'll do that next time and just go. Again, 99 for me seemed like a nice one. And then when you hit I-5, and then this would be This looks like probably 200 miles of winding mountain road, though, so that would still be endless. Going French Gulch, Lewiston, Weaverville, and then like I don't know if there's another gas station for 100 miles to Willow Creek. So you might want to put a tank or a gas can in your trunk to fill your tank somewhere along here if there's any place to stop to do that. Because yeah, this is all pretty remote. That's why I'd never been there before. When I was younger, when we used to do road trips all the time, and Mendocino itself was actually, like I said, pretty remote, 80 miles of redwood forest practically, and other types of pine trees and things. But I really wanted to get there, and I didn't go the Fort Bragg way. And the first guy I met was some kind of hunter tradesman, kind of old coot guy who said Fort Bragg is an armpit and all touristy and everything. And I don't know how the tourists get there or where they come from. Willits or Ukiah, or I don't think that you're going to San Francisco all the way to Fort Bragg very often. That would be really long, especially if you went up the one. The one place, I was going to mention it sooner. Again, going in reverse, I was heading south. The farther down you got, the more civilization you started to hit, because there was nothing before Gualala, I think, pretty much. I think that's where I stopped, and there was a real estate office and an art gallery, and I was able to use the bathroom there. When I got to the next place at Bodega Bay, maybe, they didn't want to let me use the bathroom there. It was kind of like, you have to be a customer, but there's an outhouse down the trail or whatever. Okay, fine. Then there was another spot that, I don't even know if it's on the map, but Jenner by the Sea. I should have stopped there and gone to the bathroom, but by the time I got to it, I didn't realize I was already at it. It was this Bridge Haven Cafe Aquatica. I don't know if that's it. But I knew a gal who had always talked about that place, and I finally drove past it and was like, oh, should I stop? And by the time I thought about it, it seemed like there was no place else to turn. So it was kind of like, okay, well, that's over. Not going to Jenner by the Sea, but you could probably go there from San Francisco and turn around and go back and have lunch and make it a day trip and not be too bad. Even if you wanted to do all these winding roads, again, down past Fisherman's Cove and whatever all this is that I skipped. Marshall. And so yeah, leaving from Santa Rosa, I made it to Mendocino before everybody else started showing up. They were kind of showing up right when I left. I was there for maybe 2 hours, and then knew I had a long drive to go south, and wimped out and didn't go north. And I got more than enough of my, coastal drive out of my system doing that, because if I had gone north again, I think I would have rather have been on the 101 than the 1. I think the 1 goes all the way through past Fort Bragg, but then it goes inland. Yeah. So maybe another hour, or, well, in driving time, probably even longer. However long until you're winding your way to there, and there's no town there. Laytonville is south of that, and Garberville is north of that, and nothing near either of those that I can remember, because again, I drove all of that last month or whatever. And did all that very early in the morning, most of it before the sun came up. But I stopped near Laytonville or Willits or one of those and slept for 3 hours. And so it was daytime when I went through Ukiah and all that. And had breakfast in Ukiah, I think, or Hopland, one of the two. And then, yeah, like I said, slowly but surely, you're back in civilization. So Mendocino, I didn't buy up all the cards. And again, this stuff is going to be more for, I'm going to do a separate video where I think I show off this kind of stuff, because this video is endless. But I don't expect people to watch it all at once. You watch it in a couple chunks. And Northern California is huge and big. And Santa Cruz map from way back when. Most of the streets should be accurate. That's the mountains, of course. Bay Area and River. Northern California camping. These are more Central and Southern California camping. You know, these are very out of date, probably in many regards, but curiosities. But National Geographic, again. Collector's items almost more than anything else. And then, of course, I had another book about San Francisco that I think is still in print. I had lost an old copy, and then I found one at the library or something. So I'll try and find that again and remember that one before the next video. But then I forgot. I also had these. I know I'm showing these late in the video for anybody to still care, and I don't know what's copyright infringement, so I don't know how much of these photos and things I can really show, but Southern California. And then I have also the sunset. Oops. Northern California. And this is, I forget if this is AAA who did this. I don't remember, but yeah, so San Francisco and neighborhoods. North Bay, East Bay, North Coast. Lighthouse. And I'm just getting uncoordinated because I'm trying to go fast. Shasta County, which of course was the Crater Lake video. Mendocino Coast, which is what I'm talking about now, which I didn't go there. That might be Fort Bragg in that photo. Redwood Country. So I do have these things that I didn't actually read before I left, which I should have. Oh, Napa Valley Wine Country. Yep. So it's not like all these things and places haven't been documented by people before, but I'm trying to give you kind of my take on it. Monterey Peninsula. So yeah. Anyway, so Mendocino, there was more postcards I could have got, but instead of like $5 for $1 or whatever it used to be, she wanted $1 a piece, so I only got a couple. I got this one. And I didn't get any of the actual Mendocino town, but I did take some of my own photos that I'll post. And I was not a total shutterbug. I could have stayed another hour and got some more quaint, cute little pictures. Again, a lot of the best stuff on the road that I really wanted pictures of, there was nowhere to stop, no way to get a picture. As I said in 2 of the previous videos, I tried to partner up with this gal who does supposedly that sort of thing. She says she has a website, but I don't know how to find it, and I don't think she has a YouTube channel, so I thought that would be okay. We could still cross-promote a bit her business with my videos using her clips or whatever, or she could start her own channel and I could post links to her videos, and that didn't happen. Oh, it went blurry. Let's see, it went blurry. I gotta see if we can get less blurry. It's probably been blurry the whole time in the previous video too. I don't know. If I stay still, does it get better or worse? I don't know. It's just me talking, so it doesn't really matter. So I got a couple postcards of Mendocino to add to my collection. Sorry, I'm not showing all my old Santa Cruz postcards and things. I don't know where they all are. And I couldn't find that other photo card that had a bunch of my other Yosemite photos. So I don't know how many of those anybody really cares if I post or not. But I posted a bunch last night, and a lot of the other ones I have are kind of redundant California scenery or just trees and stuff that isn't, not the scenic sequoias and stuff that you might really, really want. And some of these, like, there's always a guy in the way with his bike or something. I'm going to post it anyway, just to show you the picture that I got and the picture that I almost had to live with, kind of thing. But I'm a little bit patient, but again, I can't always get. I wanted to take photos for paintings, and there were some great opportunities completely missed. Again, in this whole area between Mendocino and Elk and Point Arena, and that whole area was a very great scenic stretch where I couldn't get anything. And then Because yeah, I didn't want to backtrack and go all the way Mountain Road back through Boonville to Cloverdale or whatever. I said, no, it's fine. I'm going to take the whole coast instead and not do Oregon this time. And I kind of wanted to go to Astoria and some other, and Coos Bay. But the smarter way to have done it would have been when I was in Eugene to go west that way, or from this Roseburg even, maybe, or what's this other one? Cottage Grove, Scottsburg. There's a couple different ways. That might even be a better highway than the Eugene one that goes directly through Veneta, Mapleton to Florence. But I don't know what's scenic. And then there's another one north of there, Corvallis and Newport. So yeah, I don't know what's the best way. I don't know how. Oregon is obviously not as big as California, but it's still pretty, cliff and all that for a good chunk of this. Although it looks like you'd miss a lot of the forested area already that I went through. From Grants Pass, again, was more on the California side than the Oregon side. It looks like you kind of go next to the forest in Oregon more than you go through the forest. So, but then there's a big forested area here between that Corvallis and this, what road is Scottsburg? What number is this? I'm trying to find a number. 90, is that 30? 38 maybe? Oregon 38 to Reedsport. So yeah, I kind of wimped out and I didn't want to spend the extra money because this trip already cost me more money because I had to backtrack the whole way to Santa Rosa and Napa. So I had to put in an extra day of driving and 2 extra tanks of gas or whatever. But there was a heat wave coming in, so I said, well, I'd rather be at the beach than not at the beach. I just hadn't decided which beach, and of course, I still ended up driving up Highway 101 for a huge chunk, which is not cool at all. It was 100 degrees the whole way, going half, most of the way up and half the way back or whatever. So yeah, I still ended up. But then, like I said, when I got to Mendocino this time, yeah, with nice cool temperature, early morning, very, mostly pleasant. But then, like I said, 2 hours there of enjoyment, and then most of the day in the car again, pretty much until I got to and stuck in traffic. Pay a toll to sit in traffic in San Francisco. 40 minutes of your life just down the drain. So then by the time I got to Santa Cruz again, the sun already almost about to go down and the weather already cold, not pleasant, but fog coming in. And so didn't really get to enjoy that hardly at all. And then the next morning, still foggy and cold when I'm taking pictures for a couple hours around Santa Cruz and Capitola, and then back in the car. And as soon as you get to Salinas, it's 102 degrees again, 105. I stopped in Gonzales for lunch. Yeah, above Soledad. I don't think I'd ever stopped there before. I think I've always stopped at Soledad or King City before. But this time I only made it to Gonzales before I really had to make a pit stop. Because I did have breakfast in Santa Cruz, but I had it earlier than usual. And the place was still crowded. It was still like, oh, at this hour of the morning, oops, okay. And that wasted me another good half an hour when I couldn't find parking and beat traffic and all that going into Castroville. Yeah, I kind of got mixed around here in Novato, but got gas there. That Petaluma, that was a pretty lively looking town. There was a carnival or something going on. I don't know I couldn't really tell you anything about San Rafael. And Mendocino itself, like I said, it's not exactly what I was expecting. Again, these would have been better shoes for there, maybe, but they still would have killed my feet. But I should have wore the ones that I wore to Crater Lake. Those other LL Bean ones, they're more of a hiking shoe. They still have the moccasin look to them, but they have laces and outsoles. or just a pair of sneakers would have been fine. Because it's paved ish, but it's all kind of lumpy, uneven street and all that kind of thing. Again, what makes Fort Bragg a tourist armpit, I don't know, because it's still pretty remote, except for there's a road to Willits and a road to, again, this nothing in between Laytonville and wherever. Um, but again, there's no Highway 1 through all this remote area, so it's even more remote than that stuff above San Francisco, I'm sure, that I was just talking about, until you get to the Bay or whatever you call it here, this Eureka, kind of a big harbor area. That again, I drove through at like 4 in the morning and didn't. I should have stopped and explored the town a little bit more. I didn't know what I was getting into, and at the time, I had kind of given. That time, my feet weren't killing me, but my legs were because I'd been in the car all day doing the extra drive to Eugene. So I was already, and then I got stuck in the car trying to sleep in that rest area. So I was super uncomfortable. So at that point, I should have got out and walked around a bit. The place was deserted. I could have parked anywhere and walked anywhere and done anything I wanted. But for whatever reason, I was like, oh, it's going to take me all day to get to San Francisco. But I was really, really, really determined to go to Santa Cruz and stay there. And then, like I said, Santa Cruz that time was so chaotic and crowded compared to where I had just been that I just said, forget it, and went home. And I was really tired of being in the car. I was really tired of doing everything. I should have stayed a night. I didn't know how much it was going to cost either, though, because again, I didn't really review the rates when I went the first time. I just kind of went seat of my pants. And since I didn't end up staying in Eugene, which would have been maybe the even more logical first choice, or Crescent City, which would have been the other logical choice, like I talked about all this in the Crater Lake video already. So we're getting near 2 hours with the background still blurry, and I don't know what else to really talk about. So hopefully that covers just about everything. So yeah, if you really, 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 really want winding coastal roads or winding mountain roads or country, there we go, country roads through wine country. Yeah, I did most of them or a lot of them, but I haven't done all of them, and I could not tell you. Again, if this one was better than that one, because everybody in Calistoga was like, oh, why would you go that way? That goes all the way to Geyserville. Okay, well, maybe Geyserville is where I should have stayed. It would have been potentially less expensive than Santa Rosa. Don't know, doubt it, because it seems like, again, your options are even more limited once you get out of that one zone. And again, Russian River being kind of a popular outdoorsy recreation area, near but not at this, whatever this is, Lake Sonoma. And then on the other side, like I said, there's this big clear lake that I didn't go anywhere near that. And then the other way up that road, I did go near there, but not through there. Calusa. I didn't go to Calusa, I don't think. Or maybe I did. No, I went through Chico. Okay, yeah, and that's not the road I was looking for, though. And then this, yeah, if you went through Fairfield and you went the east way, Vacaville and all that I debated going last time and went 99 instead. Instead of going up 101 through Fairfield, Vacaville, because that was the way I was going to go to bypass Sacramento originally without doing I-5 the whole way. But I decided 99 would be faster than 101. Yeah, okay. But that's an option too. But you might still have to go. Yeah, you'd have to go through Concord, across that bridge, near Milpitas, through San Jose or by San Jose, but not downtown San Jose, through Gilroy, but then adding all of the way through Coalinga or Paso Robles, again, adds to your trip. Maybe the Coalinga way is a little bit shorter than the Paso Robles way. I don't know, kind of similar. But then you're on I-5 even longer. So I always took the Paso Robles, Los Hills, Wasco way. And I've never been the Button Willow, whatever that road was closed because of the fire. Like I said, I think I said that already. Okay, so let me turn off the map. And finally, we'll shut my yap 2 hours later. But it's, like I said, it's Northern California. It could have been 2 separate videos if I wanted to do Northern California. But again, I mostly just drove through that and didn't really enjoy it. There was a couple little shops in Mendocino. I took one picture of the overlook that's not actually from the town. It's from, there's a hotel farther out where I absolutely had to stop to go to the bathroom. And I was surprised they let me because the market across the street, she said no restroom, but there was also a post office. So I took a photo from there that looks like it's from the town, but it's still 2 miles outside of the town. And then when I got to the town, I wasn't sure if I was at the town. And they said, no, this is the town. And it's all like 3 streets of old-timey stuff and water towers and that kind of thing. Maybe some, I didn't necessarily notice windmills, but it's probably a windmill. I don't think I got any photos of windmills. And then there's this one house that was used in a movie or a TV show or something. And then this other place with the old-timey stuff there, similar to if you go back to the Crater Lake weed video, it all looks, they've restored it all or whatever. They really rehabilitate the place. So it isn't all about to be condemned like Carpinteria or weed. So that's one thing going for it. I got then the next picture with the one picture with the picnic bench is not actual Mendocino. Then the next picture with the picnic bench is actual Mendocino, and I think I posted those already in an earlier batch, so they won't be included. And then I just took pictures of a few things. I didn't go overboard with all the things. I could have been more of a shutterbug. There was a couple houses where the people had decorated it in an interesting way, so I don't know if that really qualifies as a travel video, but it's not really a beach town either in the other sense of are there people who surf here and whatnot? Probably, but I couldn't tell you where. I didn't see surfboards and all that kind of thing hanging off the. Maybe that's what he meant by Fort Bragg. I don't know. Again, the parking was a little bit easier, but again, I got there when they were all not there yet, and I was leaving when they were all getting there. So how bad the parking situation gets. There was quite a bit of traffic leaving when I first was coming in. We were all kind of stuck behind some road construction for a couple minutes. So it seemed like a lot of traffic, but also the traffic was bunched up because they all had to stop and wait for the southbound and the northbound. You know how that goes. Or east and westbound, I guess, maybe. So I don't have a ton of Mendocino pictures. Like I said, I think I already posted 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Less than 10. So sorry about that. And then I showed you the couple postcards. But they had other postcards and T-shirts and stuff you could get. I didn't do any souvenirs this trip except for those 3 postcards. I didn't buy any new hats. I didn't buy any new shirts. I got a bunch. I got plenty. I got tons. And so if you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. If there's something you think I forgot, I thought I talked about, nobody's going to watch this. I don't know. 5 people watched the last one for like 30 seconds or something. I don't know, but I keep making them anyway. And this might be not exactly the grand finale because, like I said, maybe I'll talk about those books and junk if there's anybody has any interest next week. And next week, I'm going to do my reset video, my late summer finally close, although there won't be much difference. I'm bringing back some cowboy stuff. I'm taking away some safari stuff, but pilot stuff and safari stuff are basically the same stuff. So my more of the color shift, less blue, more beige, more stone, and, not too much navy. and not yet for brown. I've been skipping brown. And less shoes like this, and maybe boots sooner than later, because people have been asking about boot stuff again a little bit. And in some parts of the country, it's almost autumn, and here it might not be autumn for 3 more months instead of 1 more month. I really don't know what to tell you. We'll see how it goes. And signing off.